Hi AP. Okay, let's move over to frames 333 and 334. We have a new principle to learn, okay? These frames involve the bass moving up by seconds. And when that's the case, when the bass moves by seconds, okay, one voice may move in parallel thirds, and this is going to equal a doubled third in the second chord. Okay? The reason for this is that it's going to avoid some awkward or even forbidden intervals for voice parts to sing. And I'm going to show you best by plugging in some responses that you came up with. So for frame 333 for number 1, here is what we had somebody do. Okay, so this person knew that we had to build an EGB triad because I see EGB that they built. However, let's look carefully at this interval that the sopranos are singing. That interval from an F to a B, that's an augmented fourth, and that's forbidden. So how are we going to solve this? Well, let's erase this and start again. Okay, what needs to happen here is the bass is moving by a second. So one voice may move in parallel thirds to that bass. So here's the D, and there's the F. That's our third, or our 10th, but we're going to reduce it to its simple interval equivalent. So the D to the F is thirds. Then we have an E to a G for the sopranos. That's what we're talking about when we talk about that the voice moves in parallel thirds. And that's allowed. Then we have to figure out what it is, sorry about that, what it is that we are missing. Remember, we need to double the third in the second chord when we do this. So we have the E is the root, the G is the third. Another voice will need to sing the G. Tenors can go from an A to a G very easily, and the chord tone that's missing would be the B that the altos could supply. So when the bass moves up by seconds, one voice may move in parallel thirds to the bass. In this case, the soprano is going from F to G, while the bass is going from D to E. That's moving in parallel thirds. And then you can bring the other voices down to the nearest chord tone. Okay? In the second example, we need to build an ACE triad. The basses are singing an A. We're going to also need to double the third in the second chord because the bass is going up by a second. So let's find out which voice is singing the third when compared to the bass. It looks as if it's the soprano again. G to B, and then we have an A to a C. So I've got my parallel third motion here already. Now I want to bring the inner voices down to the nearest chord tone to fill in the rest here for our ACE triad. How is that done? Well, the tenors will go down to a C, and the altos will go down to an E. And if you look carefully, I've doubled the third, because I have the A, I have one A, I've got two C's, that's the third, and then I also have one fifth. In the third example, I have to build a D, F, A triad. Now, here's what somebody did for number 3. Do you see any issues with that? Well, right here what jumps out to me is this interval right here of a perfect fifth down for the tenors. That's large. You don't need to leap that far. In the second chord, this person was absolutely correct in that they doubled the third, because I do see 2 Fs. So we want to keep 2 Fs, but what if we switched the alto and tenor voices, so that the altos were singing, what if we switched the soprano and had the soprano sing the F with the altos? There's my doubled third. And then we add in the A right here for the tenor. That's very easy for the sopranos to go down to the F and the altos to go up to the F, and the tenor isn't singing that perfect fifth anymore. They're singing a minor third down. And if you look very carefully, from the bass to the alto is my major third, okay? And from the bass to the alto here, that's my minor third. That's parallel thirds. Okay? So this is something to keep in mind when we have roots that move a second by a second, is that one voice may move in parallel thirds, in which case it results in a doubled third in the second chord. Okay, now we can take a look at frame 334. In this one, you actually have some figured bass that you need to follow, so this is going to be a little bit tricky. So, first things first, let's spell the chords that we need to build. Okay, I have a C here, so that's going to be my root. Then I have an E and a G, but I have a flat sign by itself in the figured bass, therefore I need a C, E flat, G chord. In the second measure, we need to build an F, A, C, and in the third measure, we need to build an E flat, G, B, but notice we have a flat 5, so I have to make sure it's E flat, G, B flat. Once we've done that, let's realize the movement of the bass. We're moving by seconds in all of these examples. So, figure out in the first chord where our parallel tenths are, or our parallel thirds. So we have the bass singing a B flat and the soprano singing a D. So in the next chord, we have the bass singing an E, and we're going to keep our parallel tenth, or our parallel third, in the soprano. And we cannot forget to include this flat sign here because of our figured bass. Otherwise it's incorrect. And then we can bring the inner voices down to the nearest chord tone. So the F can go down to the E flat. Why E flat? Because remember, when we do this, we have to double the third. In this case, the E flat. And what's the missing chord tone for the tenors to sing? That would be the fifth, which is the G. This is allowed because that does not exceed an octave, but you must remember to include your E flat sign. Okay, in the second example, what we want to do is note that the bass moves up by seconds. So let's determine where our parallel third is. It looks as if it's in the bass and the alto this time. E to G sharp, which means we're going to go from F to an A in the alto. So I'm going to need another A because we have to double the third when we do this technique. So I'm going to bring the soprano down from the B, and they're going to double the alto. So now I have 2/3, which is the A. What's the missing chord tone? The C, which the tenors will go down from the E and sing that. In the third example, the bass part moves by the interval of a second. The bass to the alto is where our third is, so we're going to go from the E flat up to the G to create our parallel thirds between the bass and the alto. Next, what I'm going to do in this one is bring the other chord tones down to the nearest chord tone. So sopranos are singing a D, so we need to go down to a B, and it must be a B flat. Otherwise it's incorrect because you have a figured bass symbol of a flat 5. And then I can bring the tenors down to a G. So in all of these examples here, I've determined the triad that I need to build. I've determined which two voice parts have the parallel thirds, and then I have to go back and make sure that I have one root, 2/3, and 1/5. If you don't follow this procedure, there is a good possibility that you will have incorrect or forbidden motion, or intervals such as an augmented 2 appear, or an A4 appear. So this is a very good principle to keep in mind when part writing. I hope this helped. Thanks, AP.